Hello, everyone. Welcome to Word Wednesday. Geoffrey Nance here with you again. We're continuing our study on raising godly kids and our role as parents and uh, grandparents, etc., and just the different roles that people play. And today we're going to talk specifically about training. So, Proverbs 22:6, probably one of the more famous parenting verses, if you will. We're going to come back and talk about that. But before I get into that, let me talk a little bit about this idea of training. So, several years ago, some people might call those decades. I decided, all right, I'm going to start trying to work out, and so I did. And initially, it was just about like I don't really even know what I'm doing. It was really just about getting into the gym, just going. All right, I went on Monday. All right, I need to go on Tuesday. All right, I need to go on Wednesday, Thursday, etc. And then over time, you kind of watch some people doing different stuff. You go, okay, what's that working? Maybe you ask some questions, try to figure out a few things here and there as to what they're doing and why they're doing that, and maybe even what body part that's focused on. And then you go try it out, and then you got to figure out, you got to figure out some stuff. So, so I like the exercise, but how do I do it? How much weight do I use? So there's a learning process there. But the first key is really about being consistent. Uh, well, maybe even before that, the key is being there, right? Being available. You have to actually show up. You have to be there. So that's key number one is being there, physically being there, being in a place where you're in a position to train, right? Okay, so that's number one. Number two, it's about being consistent. And if you've ever tried to work out or start a diet or anything that required any sort of training, you know that consistency is huge. And there's no surprise here that when we read Proverbs 22:6, that there's going to be a sense of training involving consistency with your kids. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when we get there because I feel like as parents, that's one of those areas where it really can get difficult, where you're just like, oh, you're just tired of saying the same thing over and over again and doing the same thing. And there's a tendency to kind of almost just get a little lazy with some of that stuff. So you gotta be there. That's one. Two, you got to be consistent. Three, you have to grow. All right. So nobody that's going to the gym is going to want to continue going to the gym if they're not seeing some positive benefits and some growth. At some point, that is part of the reason that you're going. You want to see growth, and not only do you want to see growth in the way that you just kind of sense, hey, I'm starting to get to a point where I can lift some more weights, and but then you get this added bonus of other people noticing. You're like, oh man, all right, that's pretty cool. Now other people are starting to notice. Now you kind of go into the gym and you're willing to work a little bit harder because you're kind of starting to see. Not only do I kind of see the results, but other people are starting to see the results. Now this is kind of getting exciting. So there kind of needs to be a goal, and you need to see results. And then the next thing I would say when it comes to training is being willing to work through the times when you don't really want to do it. All right. So there's got to be a sense that I'm willing to keep working, even though I really don't want to do this right now. I don't want to mess with it. I don't want to get in the car. I don't want to drive over there. I don't want to lift this body part today because you probably established a routine. At some point that happens. So you go in there and you're just like, I just need to show up. But at some point you're going to say, all right, I'm going to do biceps and triceps this day, and chest and back, or chest and shoulders. Then I'm going to do legs. And then you've got these different days, and maybe I'll do cardio. And then you'll set up a structure, a schedule. Those are things that are going to come over time. But then you got to work through that. How are you going to handle it when you're tired and you didn't sleep well the night before, or you've got something coming up, or you just don't feel good? Are you going to make yourself go? And if so, what's going to be your reason for doing that? So what is your why behind the overcoming? So what does that look like for you? And then we're going to talk a little bit about that as a parent. And then ultimately, guys, we want to persevere. It is about perseverance. It's not, hey, I did it for a bit, now I'm going to stop, because then you'll lose those gains that you had. So it's about perseverance. And so I think all those things are certainly true in our parenting as well. I remember years ago, my wife decided that she wanted to run a marathon. That's 26.2 miles of running, which seemed absolutely terrible to me. It seems like a horrible idea. But she didn't set out the first day and just say, "Hey, I'm gonna go see if I can run 20 miles." Like that wasn't it at all. She had a program. Somebody else had helped her kind of establish, here's some guidelines that we think anybody training for a marathon should take. And you start out with, maybe running a couple of miles, and you kind of stretch it out to 3 or 4 or 5, and then 7, 10, up in the teens. And that in and of itself is kind of a victory. And you look back and you go, man, I never thought I'd be able to run 10 miles, let alone do it in one day. And then here I am doing that. And now it's like, now I want to go to, 12, or I want to hit 15. And you kind of have this goal. Well, I can do 15. Can I do 20? And so you're just constantly pushing yourself because you're seeing progress and you're getting excited by that. So let me read a little bit from Proverbs 22:6 here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some interpretations of this verse. Train a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not turn from it. Now, I suspect that most of you guys on here have heard that verse before. I mean, like I said, it's a very common verse. Train up a child in the way that they should go, and when they're old, they will not depart from it. So, a couple of things here, and let's go back to our working out example. I mean, anybody that's has their first baby, most people go into it going, what are we supposed to do now, right? I mean, you kind of don't, like I say, babies don't come with instruction manuals, and yet, we have other people to rely on. We can go read books on that, but ultimately, each person is going to parent slightly differently. So let's go through our stages here of training. Okay, so one, be there. Be there for your kids. Uh, be physically present. Be emotionally present. So be there when your kids are there. You be there. Don't be distracted. I know this is something that I personally struggle with. It's like I'm there, but I'm distracted. Maybe it's by the phone. Maybe it's by thinking about work, or maybe it's thinking about something else, or it's because I'm tired or whatever. So I might be there physically, but maybe not really, or I'm tired. So I'm going off in my room and they're doing other things. No, be there physically, be there emotionally, be there. All right. So your actual presence, that's part of the training. And then, as they kind of grow up, you say, well, here's things that I have to do, So, hey, they spit up a little bit. I got to clean that mess up. Oh, look, there's a dirty diaper. I got to clean that up, So there's a process for that too. And then you got the whole feeding thing, right? And that's a process. So, there's training going on from the time that they're born and as they get older, right? But the way that you train changes a little bit too, right? So if I was sitting here with a 17-year-old still feeding them and giving them little, vegetable meals or whatever, those things out of out of the cups or whatever, that's not good, right? Somewhere along the line that we've missed some pretty important steps, because my kids should have made significant progress between the time he was a baby to being an almost senior in high school. So there ought to be some progress there. So I'm there physically, then I'm figuring things out. That means I might be asking questions. I'm working through things. I'm figuring things out. I'm like, how much can I lift? Well, how much can we do this? How much should we be doing this? What should we do? Should we let them have, chocolate before they're one? Should they taste sugar before that or not? And then how much are we going to limit that as they get older? So again, you're adapting as you move along. And you're sitting here saying, all right, but we're still training them up. We're still growing them. So there's a sense of it's adapting, right? That's part of this natural training thing, is that we're adapting, we're growing. And then we want to see growth. All right. So there's certain things I want to see my kids do. There are certain things I don't want to see my kids do. And part of that is me expressing those things. I remember, with my dad in particular, he would just get really upset because we wouldn't do something, but he wouldn't say what he wanted us to do. And then he'd get really mad when we didn't do it. I'm like, I am really not good at reading your brain. Like I don't know. Like if you just tell me, then I can do it. But I need you to tell me. Like I don't like these, unwritten expectations. Guys, be clear with your kids. Start dialogue with them at an early age. Start talking to them about things that are important. Talk to them about things that are a little uneasy. If you can do that when they're young, then you're going to start to establish a habit where they're going to want to or be more willing to do that with you when the topics are even more uncomfortable. But if all of a sudden you go from, hey, we've never had an uncomfortable conversation to we need to have one now, just imagine that that's going to be awkward. But if you've trained them to say, look, we talk about everything. There's nothing that's really off limits. Let's talk about it. And you lay out your expectations. You've been training them since they were a child to say, this is how we're going to relate. You say, we don't yell at each other. If we have an issue, we talk about it. If you're emotional, do you handle it this way? There's a right and wrong way to handle emotions. God has given us emotions, but this is how we handle them. We don't do this. We do this. You're setting that expectation, and then you're naturally progressing. You're growing as you move along, and then as that relationship develops. And the next thing we want to see is that we want to see that it's making a difference. Okay, we want to see that it's making a difference, because ultimately that's kind of the thing that drives us. When you get to a time when things are difficult, you need to kind of know, well, why am I wanting to keep doing this, right? So let's combine a couple of things here. What is my why behind my motivation? So why am I still committed to doing this? Why? Because God's given me that command, right? That I have a duty to raise up my kids, to teach them certain things. I mean, we can see that in Ephesians, it says that we're supposed to be imitators of God as beloved children and walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. We see that, God is our Father. He loves us. We need to express to our kids, what does it mean to really show love, to express love? Deuteronomy, it says, these commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, and when you lie down and when you get up. Guys, that's pretty much covering the gamut of saying, as you do life together, talk about God. Talk about his commandments. Talk about this type of person, right, that we feel like Jesus is and that who God wants us to be, and then impress that on your kids, right? So our church is, we say this all the time, that parents are pastors, right? So I remember as a youth minister, I'd have parents every now and then who did not attend church, but they dropped their kids off and say, hey, can you make them right? And I remember sitting there thinking, wow. I mean, I get them for an hour or two, maybe a few hours a week, but they're with you the whole time. No, I can only do so much. That you're their parent. You're their primary spiritual leader and guider. That's biblical for us to do that. So we have a responsibility as parents to do these things, to impress these commandments on our children. Talk about them when we sit at home, when we walk along the road, when we lie down, when we get that means from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, that's something that kind of permeates your life, that just talking about Jesus, having this be familiar, having those conversations, talking to your kids, and really working on training. Sometimes training is hard. You have to be consistent, guys. I know that with my kids, sometimes we have four of them, and it feels like, we had our fourth one. It was kind of like, oh, we're tired. And our older kids, like, she gets away with stuff that we didn't get away with. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. And then I kind of am like, yeah, it's because we're tired or whatever. I'm like, but then that's not good. Because we did some really good things with them, and it doesn't make sense to just say, oh, I'm tired, so now the youngest one gets away with stuff. That's not good. That's not fair to them, nor is it fair to her, because now the things that we did, which we thought were important, we're just saying, I don't kind of want to go because I'm tired. Well, we've got to be consistent, right? So we have to keep doing the things that we've done before. Even when we're tired, we have to say, all right, am I going to go work out? Am I going to train up my kids? Am I going to still do these things even though I'm tired? Am I going to show the consistency that they need to see? One of the things that they've told us over and over again as parents is that more is caught than what is taught. What does that mean? It means that your kids watch what you do. And that whole do as I say, not as I do thing, it doesn't work. that's not going to produce godly kids, because they're going to see the hypocrisy there, and they're going to be like, I don't want any piece of that. I don't want that. I mean, I see that my parents say this over here and they do this over here. That's horrible. We can't do that. We cannot be that way and then expect our kids to walk in the way that Jesus desires for them to go if we're not setting a consistent example for them in word and deed. So I hope that this has helped you guys today. I really want to encourage you to really see that, parenting is a blessing and it's a responsibility and it's hard. And yet it's something that God has called those of us who have kids to do. And if you don't have kids right now, or, but you have people that you're around, it could be at the nursery, it could be children's ministry, youth ministry, you still impact people. And all these things that we've been talking about apply to all of those relationships. Whether you're, again, a parent, a grandparent, or just somebody who's around kids, we have the ability to influence them and to teach them, right? And here's the thing, that I want to close with this: that some scholars say that word "should" is not really in the Hebrew there. Train up a child in the way that they should go. And what's really challenging us to do is be aware that if we don't intervene in our kids' life, if we don't teach them right and wrong, if we don't teach them those differences, if we don't instill in them the way that they should go, then they'll just naturally do what they're inclined to do. And that's pretty important there, guys, to realize that we have that responsibility. And so I think the word "should" is a good word to include there, but I also think that that's a stern warning too. That if we just say, "Hey, I'm going to be passive and just kind of let my kids do whatever I want them to do," that's not good. It's not biblical. And there's a stern warning here in Proverbs 22 against that. There's a sense that we're supposed to train, we're supposed to lead, and we're supposed to guide, and it's supposed to be a consistent part of our lives. So, really want to challenge and encourage you guys with that word today. If you need help, if you need prayer, if you need encouragement, go find a local church that can help you with those things. Go find somebody who's been where you are and who can help you. Go look for good examples and learn from those people. I mean, those are all things that we ought to do if we're training for a marathon, or for training just to work out. Well, how much even more important that would be if we're talking about training kids. Guys, thanks for being a part of this today. I hope this has been a really challenging and also encouraging word for you today here on Word Wednesday. Thanks for being a part of this. If you want to share this message with others, we sure would be glad for you to do that. And just continue, guys, to be encouraged and to persevere. Train up your children the way that they should go, right? Because ultimately, we have a great privilege and responsibility of raising those that God has entrusted to us. Thanks.